Hello students, so welcome to part 2 of the exercise on vehicle registration plate. Right, so in part 1, what happened? Part 1, we just have a very simple exercise where we look at the vehicle registration plate. We say that it has three parts: a prefix, a main body, and a check digit. All we require to do is to check that the prefix has 1 to 3 letters, the main body is 1 to 4 numbers, and the check digit is a single letter. So that's the first thing that we did in part 1. We have successfully completed the task. We have lots of test data to try. So now let's take a look at part 2. So part 2, what happened is now we have a closer look at the check digit, right? Because the word implies check digit means there's some kind of calculations to check whether this license plate is actually legit. So there are certain conditions that has to be made, right? And how it is done. So here, let's talk about the Singapore vehicle registration. So we have mentioned this. We have the prefix. It has 1 to 3 maximum of 3 letters. Main body, 1 to 4 numbers. And the check digit is single letter. We already know that, right? So the check digit is calculated by converting letters into numbers. So what it does is first you have the prefix that is in letters, they convert it to number correspondingly. So we have A is equals to 1, Z is equals to 26. So it just runs, right? However, only two of the prefix is actually used, right? So most prefix, the common ones will be 3 letters. And if it's 3 letters, then we just use the second and the third letter. If it's 2 letters, it's fine. However, if it's the first, only 1 letter, there are some car plate number where the prefix is just a single letter. In those cases, we'll just treat the first one as a 0 and then use the only letter as the second letter, right? And as for the numbers, well, actually the numbers we want it to be 4 digits. So for those that's less than 4 digits, so if you just have the number 5, for example, it'll be 0005. So we actually need to add in the leading zeros before we do our calculation, right? Now, after we have all these things in place, so we have 2 letters that's converted, right, to numbers 1 to 26, and then we have the 4 numbers, including leading 0 if necessary. So the weighted values are this, which means that 9 multiply with the first character, 4 multiply the second one, 5 represent multiply the third one, and so on. So after we multiply, we add everything up, the total, we divide it by 19. After we divide by 19, okay, we look at the remainder. So if the remainder is 0, the check digit should be a 1, A. If it's 1, it should be a Z. If it's 2, it should be a Y, and so on correspondingly. So this is actually how the check digit is actually done. Okay. So what happened is down here I have a program written by another teacher actually. He actually looked at this condition and wrote the following program, but deliberately includes some syntax error and logical error for students to find. So this is the code that's written by the other teacher. So he has the checksum. These are the legitimate letters to be used in the checksum. He has the weight here, right? Registration plate. So the first thing he do is try to get the prefix. So looking at the prefix, he check for the prefix. Then after that, the prefix, the two letters of the prefix, letter 1 and letter 2, we get the value accordingly. And then after that, we multiply the weight to add to the total, right? The total before we divide by 19. However, if the prefix is not more than 1, that means a single digit, then we will need to just multiply with the second letter in the weight, because the first one is treated as a 0, right? Then you look at the main body. The main body, you collect the main body, and then we put in the leading zeros, and then after that, we multiply accordingly with the weight. Okay, so after that, down here, the remainder we calculate, and then we check against the table, or rather the string at the very beginning. So there are some errors here, and we want to hunt down the errors. So where are the errors? You try, okay, to do it. After you have tried identifying the errors, you can actually look at my solution to compare, right? But you have to try first, okay? That's how learning is actually done. So the task is this, right? Identify and correct the errors in the program so that it works accordingly to the algorithm that was given. So this is what I've identified the error. Okay, so the first error, right? The weight. If you look at the original version, it is a curly bracket. So we don't want curly bracket, we want square bracket because we want to collect it as a list. So it's a syntax error. So we change the curly bracket to a square bracket so that this is a list. Yeah, that's the first error. Then we have a logic error here because what we want to do is whatever the entry is, we want it to be in uppercase. We know that we process vehicle registration plate number with uppercase. So change lower to upper, change the lower method to upper method so that we collect the uppercase. The third error here is a logical error, right? Down here, if you want to collect the prefix are actually letters. So we should be testing whether they are is alpha. Use the is alpha method rather than is digit. So this is a logic error, right? And the next logic error is over here. Okay, down here the original one was CHR. Okay, we don't want CHR, we want ORD. So what we do here is for each of the letter, okay, we convert it to the according the ASCII value, and then we subtract by 64. Why? Because we go from the uppercase A, which is 65, you subtract 64, you get 1. Uppercase B is 66, subtract by 60, or you get 2. So that corresponds to the value that we want. So that's how we get the values for the first and second letter before we add them to the multiply with the weight and add them to the total. Well, the next error is what happened when there's only a single letter. So if it's a single letter, the registration plate, the index here should be a 0 rather than 1 because we start counting from 0. So if there's only one letter in the list, then the first index should be index 0. So change this to index 0. Okay. Next, another logical error here is the main body. So the main body, we collect the numbers, but what happened is when we collect it, we should not include the check digit. So the ending point, we need to add in a -1 index so that we omit the check digit when we collect the main body, right? And then after that, what we do with it is another logical order. In the original version, right, the zeros is actually appended to the back of the main body. We don't want that. We want them leading 0. So we switch the order, right? So instead of this portion here being on the right side, it should be on the left side when we add it to the main body. Okay. Next, we have a syntax error here, right? Remember, we are adding up the total. Okay, so we multiply by the weight. We need to add to the totals. In the original version, it's just an assignment equal sign there. So it should be a plus equal so that we actually add to the total. Then after that, the next line is a syntax error because the indentation is wrong. The weight counter, when we add the weight counter, it should be inside the loop, right? So previously, it was not indented, so it is outside the loop. In that case, we want it inside. Okay. And finally, the last syntax error at the bottom here is when we do the checksum. Okay, we should use a double equal sign here in order to do the comparison, right? Previously it was just a single equal sign, which is an assignment, which is not correct. Okay, and of course the registration plate, we are comparing with the check digit. Check digit is actually the last item on the registration plate, so the index should be a -1 rather than a 1. So that's the final error over here. Okay, so quick scan through, right? These are the things that the errors, 10 lines of them, right, that we have actually identified. So I hope you are successful in identifying all the errors. If you have, well done, congratulations. If not, well, continue practicing looking at codes and trying coding yourself. The more you code, the more you practice looking at code, you will be more familiar and you will do better. All the best. All right.